And we are live, albeit a few minutes late due to some technical difficulties. And I want to welcome our special guest today, Aaron Schroer. Thanks for joining us today, Aaron.
Awesome, Jack. Glad to be here.
So we're going to be talking about homeschooling today, and I really like the angle we're coming from. I'm just a guy, run a business, got fed up with the school system. Single dad, by the way, decided I'm going to homeschool my kid. Million reasons you could come up with not to do it, but you figured out that it was more important to do it than come up with excuses, and you got it done. And you've been doing it now. We're going to talk about how it all worked out and what led you to that decision. Before we dig into that, though, just kind of let people know, who is Aaron, man? Like, what do you do professionally, and how'd you end up doing that? I know you're a serial entrepreneur, basically. How'd you end up where you're at, and did that have anything to do with kind of like, if I can do my own thing, then maybe I need to be teaching my kid to do his own thing too?
Yeah, it absolutely did. So, professionally speaking, I dropped out of college from Georgia Tech right around the year 2000. And I guess I watched the movie Office Space a couple too many times and saw my future in a cubicle, and I opted out then. So I kind of took a left turn after doing some soul searching and decided to pursue a career in crafts. So I started a furniture shop. I did an intensive course in Scotland for a year and started building furniture, doing furniture repairs, but mostly building stuff, and just kind of elevated through the years and built a really nice shop, and just kind of got frustrated with some of the kind of revolving door problems that industry sees. It's a really difficult thing, and started another business with some people, and they just weren't great to work with. So I decided partnerships weren't for me. And that's kind of when I dug in to get into home inspections. Had a kid kind of during that period with a woman, and she struggled with some substance abuse issues. So she's not currently in his life and in a meaningful way for a lot of years now. So he's about to turn 11, and I've been raising him by myself since he was about 18 months old. And, so in that time, bought houses, built a company. We've got 7 employees. We do home inspections in the Middle Tennessee area, a big chunk of Middle Tennessee. And it's been a good adventure building this business. And I've had my son in tow with me for a lot of things. He's been exposed to a lot of adult, situations with meetings and classes and just me growing this business. So that's kind of how I got here in a nutshell.
Yeah. Can you talk about kind of maybe what things were like for your kiddo growing up prior to COVID? Like, I guess it was probably like any other kid, and go to school and come home and live your life. And then this whole kind of topsy-turvy thing came into the world.
Totally. So we live in Nashville, and Nashville public schools are hit or miss. We have a really good lottery system here. So if there's a school that you want your kid to go to, you can put in for that lottery system. In kindergarten, he got accepted to a really decent school that's close to our house, a desirable school. And once you're in, you're in. So he did elementary school, real stable at one place. And then in middle school, we had to put in, because they start middle school in 5th grade in Nashville, which is a little different than most places. Usually it's 6th grade is middle school or junior high. So he got in there, went through boot camp in the summer, and was ready to go and start. He was into other things. We do Scouts. He's been in Cub Scouts since kindergarten. And did karate for a couple years. And he's a kid. We camp and we fish and we catch trout on the river and do fun stuff. But mostly he likes video games and YouTube and things like that, like any normal kid would.
Yeah, I mean, like, other than the YouTube part, it sounds like you tried to give him a childhood as close to an 80s childhood as you could, people from our generation that grew up with freedom as a kid. And and eventually this leads to you deciding, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get him out of government schools. What What made you do it? Why did you finally say, like, I'm going to take the leap and I'm going to do this?
Cool. So last year was a bit of a train wreck with COVID. You know, they were out of school, and we were all thrust into basically, well, they called it virtual school, but it's very similar to homeschooling. Um, you know, they were in and out, and they had to wear masks, and when they were in and then they were back out again, so it was really unpredictable. It was a very involved process. He had, you know, I forget what they call the classes, but he would sit in a Zoom meeting with his friends at school and his teacher, and the teacher would teach, and they would have worksheets and stuff they would have to do. And oh yeah, it wasn't in Zoom; it was in a Microsoft product. I'm getting corrections from across the table here. So it was very involved. I had to keep an eye on his work, make sure he was doing his work, help him get things scanned and uploaded and stuff. Towards the end of the year, something that struck me as odd, when they went back to school, it was kind of a relief. It's like, all right, well, I don't have to do this anymore. They've got it. So I kind of just let my responsibilities go at that point. All right, they're back in school, they're doing their thing. And I went back on to the same virtual system because some kids were virtual and some were in school. And I just was checking in on his assignments. What are his grades like? Where's he at? And there were a lot of missing assignments where he had zeros. So I sent the teacher an email or a private message on that program. And I said, hey, there's quite a few missing things here. What do we need to do to get back on track with those assignments? I don't have access to those worksheets anymore and those assignments. So, you know, my son said some of them were already done. They were in a basket. He was going to check and make sure, you know, just put his name on them so he could get credit. A couple days later, all of those assignments, the teacher had put a 5 in front of the 0. So now what would have been a 0 is now a 50. Because you shouldn't get credit for work that wasn't done. And I feel like this is a kind of probably a No Child Left Behind type thing where we just fully willing to help their child and make sure they do the work. And they just kind of missed that one. So kind of fast track past the summer, in right before school started here in Nashville and Davidson County, Metro schools had said that, you know, masks were going to be optional for the 2021-2022 school year. But then a few days before school started, they had an emergency meeting of the school board, and they said now masks are mandatory.
And they did this kind of in secret too, didn't they? They didn't like do an emergency. Hey, parents were having a meeting. They kind of did their own thing and did it under the table, sort of.
Right. So it's kind of an emergency meeting that they had. Like, oh, we need to discuss COVID and what next year is going to look like, and this is going to be bad. So it didn't give parents the appropriate amount of time to show up and make arguments and talk about it. I think they announced it the day before it happened. Which I just thought that's, you know, they've had all summer to consider this, and they didn't have an option of, you know, like a plan for what happens when we do have to have kids quarantine, because they're going to quarantine this year. I already know you're exposed. Somebody in your class had it. Well, now everybody's going home for 2 weeks or a week or whatever it's going to be. So I kind of saw that as a red flag. It's like, you don't have a plan. You're going to be using snow days for the students and try to keep up with this. And my vision is that the year was just going to fluctuate up and down, back virtual. And, you know, I felt like we've been shown previously that, hey, you have the skills and the ability to teach your kids at home because they made us do it last year. So if we could do it then, why can't we do it now?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, that was my approach, that when people are saying, I don't know if I can homeschool my kids, I'm like, whatever you needed to do it, you've already done. Right. And I know it can be inconvenient and what have you. And maybe it won't work for some people if they won't take the effort to make it work. But don't say you can't do something you've done. Right. You did. Everybody did. Everybody figured out a way to get it done. And I'm with you. The masking thing was something that we kept hearing, well, we're not going to do it. Maybe we're going to do it individual school districts over and over. We have no statewide mandate for kids to wear masks in school, but that was one of the things I'm like, you're not taking my grandchildren and putting masks on their face for 8 hours a day all year long. You're not doing that. Then the other thing, like you said, with the whole, they're going to close down, open up, close down, open up. Like there's no stability, and kids need stability. It's better off, even if school didn't have all the problems that it does, a kid to me is better off with the stability of, okay, well, I'm going to learn from home and I'm always going to be learning from home versus I'm in and I'm out and I'm in and I'm out. And then I guess the thing with the way that the schools were handling it is they were basically teaching our kids that they were a threat to other people by existing.
Right. And that's terrible. And one of the most ludicrous things that really struck me emotionally, because I was already picking my son up from school and sitting in the pickup lines after school because daycares got closed and bus services got closed. And when I go to scoop him up, like there's 4 kids in a field in the front of the school throwing a football, wearing masks. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like they are in the middle of a field, just 4 boys running around. And then I'd see kids, filing out of the school building, and the masks were just disgusting by the end of the day. There's big wet stains. They got them in their mouth, and they're filtering dust all day. And it was gross. It's like, this can't be healthy. We have lost our minds at this point. Like, this makes 0 sense.
We had some early in the whole thing mandates here in Texas that eventually went away. And after they went away, I also kind of saw the damage being done to our kids with it, in that I would go out to a restaurant or something like that. And this is after they stopped the stupidity of you wear your mask so you sit down, or, whatever nonsense that was. And I'd see parents bring their kids in, and the parents are not wearing masks. And the kids weren't. It was almost like they were enjoying it. And my wife and I would sit and go, well, what is, and we'd realize like that's from their schooling. Mm-hmm. They've been actually taught that this is like a good, virtuous thing, and they all have their little decorations. And so like these kids are sitting there enjoying being masked. And again, I'm like, that's not being done to my kids. That's not happening.
I feel the same way. I'm with you.
And there's a lot of other things, but it was like, okay, that's the last straw on the back of the camel, and the camel's back is broken, and we're done. We there is no more. There's a verse in the Bible, to hither thou shalt come and no further, right? And like that line's back there, but we're done talking about it,
right? And when I consider what kind of breaks my heart is, you've got kindergartners and first graders who are in school, and this is all they've known. Like they have no baseline of what normal is, and for people to say this is the new normal, like I reject that idea. I'm not good with it.
Yeah, I'm not good with it either. And I think that whole statement of new normal is yet another straw on the back of a very tired, very weary camel. So what did you actually have to do to withdraw your kiddo from school in Tennessee? I guess it varies by state. With my grandson, since he had already been in school like your son was, we basically had his parents send in a letter that said we're withdrawing, and that was the whole thing. With my granddaughter, who had not yet started and went into kindergarten this year, we just did nothing. Like since they were never registered, there was no need to withdraw. There was no need to like tell the school that she won't be showing up. There was a zero sum, but we had to take some action with my grandson.
Mine was similar. And, this wasn't something that I really knew about. So I did all my research the day that the school board came out with their decision. And, the state's website is not super easy to navigate because homeschooling is not something they're trying to promote for some reason. But I do know that, hey, there are multiple options and avenues that one can go here. You can sign up under a co-op program or some sort of umbrella school where they'll keep up with records and attendance and compliance. But ultimately what I found out is, man, there are some really, really simple options here in Tennessee. Like all I need to do, like I registered as an independent. So we're not under a program. Like I set the curriculum, anything goes. So they have a form on the website that I had to fill out and send back in. I had to send in my high school diploma, and I had to send in his shot record. And with that, like it was official. So I emailed the things, I sent them, I followed up by calling the office and just making sure that they got it, because I want to verify. It could have been weeks before I heard anything. And when they ask, well, what's your reason? I said, well, because of the school board's decision yesterday. And a lady on the phone says, I'll just put other. You put what you want.
I'll put other.
So it was really simple. And like I said, it didn't take a whole lot. Most people are under the impression that they've got to join some sort of at least online homeschooling program. And here in Tennessee, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, we don't have any requirements really at all. There's 4 core courses, and I want to talk to you about what that you have to say that you're teaching. But even in Texas, it's like no one comes and checks. It's more like you have to say you're doing this if you're asked, basically.
Mm-hmm.
We have teachers in the family, and one of them's like, well, are they doing Texas history? Because they have to do Texas history. I'm like, I don't know. In the summer, we'll take them to the Alamo. Like, no, but you have to. I'm like, no, we don't. And they really couldn't get past this because they have to do it in their, it's part of the curriculum in Texas. And in my case, I am using an online curriculum, and my grandson and granddaughter are basically attending a school that's accredited in the state of California remotely. So they're not even going to school in Texas. And they really that was, and I'm like, yeah, wow. And these are the people that teach our children. You can't grasp this. No, we don't have to do this. So what are you required to teach within your curriculum? Is there any requirements specifically whatsoever? Or?
So the requirement here is, I think every other year students get tested with what they call a TCAP test. It's, your basic standardized fill in the bubble tests. Say what? Oh, 3rd and 4th grade in elementary does TCAPs. They have another one for middle school and high school. So this is a year where he'll have to do some standardized testing, but that's just going to be math and English, I believe. There may be some history stuff too and science, but it's just basic standardized testing. We're using a program called IXL. It's an online web-based program, IXL.com. And, it has some really great features that is based on standardized testing, right? So we spent our first week doing evaluation. Hey, you're gonna sit here on IXL, and this was a program that Metro Nashville schools had been using for years. So we're familiar with it, knowing that it covers all grade subjects. So with that, he spent his first week kind of evaluating. I want to look at your handwriting. So we got a composition book out and we did handwriting practice, and I had him do a typing tutor. Let's see how many words per minute you're typing. These evaluations kind of showed me where are you at in measurement, where are you at in fractions, where are you at in your addition and subtractions. It was a broad scope of math, and it kind of gave him a scale on that. On each of these things, you're at a 4th grade level, you're at a 6th grade level. And the same for English. There's writing skills, language arts, reading comprehension, and it showed on all those. So we're able to evaluate, and then they made recommendations from that evaluation, which was cool. So we did a little bit of remedial work, and we brought up the low points before we really got into this year's curriculum. And then it'll link to and give you recommendations for the Tennessee state standards. So I just kind of use that, and they have, I think, just about all the states, but those state standards may not be on what their recommendations are for grade level. So when he was learning about Sacagawea, because Tennessee wants people to learn about Sacagawea, it was actually like a 3rd grade lesson. And that's the basic tool that we use. So just to make sure that his math is where it needs to be and his science where it needs to be, he just gets on there, he does some of those, and it's not a teaching program, it's a testing program. So if you don't get it right, they don't move you forward. If you don't understand it, well, now it's my job to go in here and do a little teaching on the subject. Or you can watch Bill Nye the Science Guy on YouTube and learn about the water cycle or whatever it might be. So that's kind of been our strategy for the academic stuff and the expectations we're going to have to meet later.
So it actually seems like there's a little more oversight in the state of Tennessee than Texas. Like we literally don't do anything. Like we've actually figured out that if we want certain, like for our own information, if we want to know they're at a certain grade level or whatever, there's a test, and I can't remember what it's called, think it's Ohio or something. And I don't know that it actually stands for something. It's not actually the state of Ohio. I'm not sure, but it's standardized testing like that. And you can either just do it so you have the information for yourself, or it can be administered by any licensed teacher. So like we could have like my sister-in-law or another family member's a teacher actually administer the test as a proctor if we wanted to do that. And, we may or not. We kind of just look at what are the results of the work. He gets, we're doing an organized curriculum. So he gets tested and he gets grades and follow up. And so does the younger one. I mean, kindergarten is, there's not a lot of grading going on in kindergarten, but I've actually been surprised going to this curriculum that we're using. And like my 5-year-old is learning about things like, molecular bonds and stuff like that. I'm like, I didn't learn that in kindergarten. We learned C-spot run, and they're not going real high level with it. They're just understanding like basic chemical reactions and stuff like that. Just that it's a thing and opening that mind young. And I think the freedom to be able to do other things, like, because the girl's taking an hour a day to do this, and the boy's taking it. He's older, he has more advanced work. He's taking 2.5 hours at the maximum a day to do this, and that's getting them ahead. So we take a lot of time and we let them do whatever they want as long as they're learning something. We'll say like, well, you're going to do another hour of learning today, and it's almost like a blended, like the unschooling approach along with the curriculum approach. And even if you're doing something the way you are and you have to meet certain requirements, I imagine you have a lot of ability to create freedom as well. Like what exactly is he studying?
Okay, so, and that is one of the things where we get to decide what you're studying when you put in that resignation letter, this opt-out letter, this withdrawal notice to the state, is you get to say your own subject. So I was pretty poignant in what I put in there. We're going to study liberty and freedom, and we're going to study entrepreneurship, and these are our classes, right? So, we had history and math in there too, but I definitely put, fishing, auto body. Like I let them know, like, we're going to be studying some things that we're going to round this out. And being independent like we are, we get to do those things too. So, I bought him a couple cursive writing workbooks because he's never seen or tried cursive before, and it's good to learn your letters and how to string together a word. So right now he's kind of on that. We did some printing work at the beginning of the year, but now he's learning cursive because that's quickly becoming a lost art. We watch a lot of documentaries. So there's some really good documentaries out there on, the age of 8 different empires and samurai culture and other things that he's interested in, and nature. And we do those. But if we go fishing, I might call that school, because you are learning, in my opinion. And he's had a good pleasure to go do some other stuff like that. He does handgun training. So there's a few people around here who will take
physical
him in for
education,
classes.
man. Yeah, it's phys ed.
Part of it, right?
Yeah.
My Jeep needed new headlights, so we went outside and, all right, here's a screwdriver. Let me show you. Let me tell you what to do. And he changed the headlights on the Jeep. So that's work for us, and it's educational too. There's been a lot of reading. He's probably read more books this year than he has before. And, we get a good mix of things I want him to read versus things he wants to read. He's got some series that he's interested in, and we've been studying the Constitution a little bit at a time, and some books on business and success, some podcasts. He's interested in getting a protection dog, so we've been running through the protection dog podcasts with Joe and on his stuff. So that'll be our PE. We'll go on a walk and we'll play a podcast while we're on a walk. And that's, we can spend 30, 45 minutes on that and kind of multitask there, get a dual use out of that time.
What's an average day like then? Like, it sounds like it can be anywhere, but like, do you have like a core thing that you do every day, and then there's these other things or what have you?
Yeah, the core thing, we kind of looked at what all. So I had him go through on IXL, and all right, here's the Tennessee state standards, and these are how many. I told him to count how many math things do you need to do to meet all those standards this year. So he counted them up. I told him, well, there's 180 days. How many do you need to do every day to meet your goal? And he figured that out, and we wrote that down. And then we did that for science and history and English. and he came up with his numbers. So I'm like, all right, this is what you need to do on a daily basis. This is your chop wood, carry water. And then I like for him to read a little bit every day, to work on his writing a little bit every day. And then, we've got flex time after that. How it starts, what time it starts, when we finish, what happens between them, all that's kind of loosey goosey and just depends how the day goes. One thing I've learned is that, there's days where it's just not there, right? The academic stuff, it's not going to happen. And, there was a certain realization that, you know what, there's going to be days like that, whether he's here or if he's in a classroom.
Yep.
And the difference is that teacher might have, she's got 25 kids. There might be 4 or 5 kids who are in that state of mind on that day. So I actually have a lot more empathy now for teachers and the struggles they go through. And this is just, there's days I have a hard time showing up for work. So it's just part of it, but it was a good realization.
The thing about that though is, so you're like, my wife and I have come to this realization doing this, like, there are going to be days. And if you think back to when you were in school, where like the teacher's talking and you're, I don't know, looking at a bird out the window or examining with intensity a piece of thread sticking out of your shoe, and you hear nothing that they say and you don't care and nothing can make you care that day. And then it's like you're on this conveyor and the conveyor is moving and you're not. And then when you drop back in, everybody that was paying attention's up here. Some people are way back there and you're in this middle state. But the thing, especially with math, right? Like the things that you were supposed to learn the day you checked out on, you don't know. And you can't understand what's going on now that you're paying attention. Math is one of those subjects that's really like that. Everything builds on the next step. And the teacher doesn't understand why the kid doesn't understand, because as far as the teacher's concerned, we covered that yesterday or last week or whatever, right? And then that everything's jacked up. Where if you're doing homeschooling and it's just a day where the kid's going to check out, we've come to peace with it. Okay, right. As long as it's not a chronic thing, fine. Then just we're not going to do school today. Or we're only going to do, you're going to do one subject today or whatever. And they're still ahead. I mean, I got a kindergartner that's doing first grade classes. Down to one course left for kindergarten. But we had a breakdown. 5-year-olds have breakdowns. It happens. Mm-hmm. We had a breakdown the other day. I hear absolute, total freaking toddler meltdown going on. And Papa Jack's got to go see what's going on. And I went and talked to her, and Grandma wanted her to do school, and she didn't want to do school. And we sat, and she went in our bedroom and slammed the door. Girls start early with that maneuver. She was in there hiding everything. I just sat down in the bed next to her, and I'm like, so let's talk about scheduling to a 5-year-old, And I started explaining, I said, we just need you to get a certain amount of work done every week. And I don't really care what days you do it. But if you just go do your work now, and she's crying and mad and red in the face, and I said, if you just go take care of your work now, we'll talk about it and we'll figure out how you can figure out what days you're going to do as long as you get it done. I want to do that, and like that's giving them some control. And that way, if they unplug for a day, they're not behind. And I also like what you said about cursive. That's something that when the school system started talking about not teaching it anymore, I understood the rationale, but I also was like, you mentioned the Constitution. The Constitution and the Declaration of Independence were handwritten. So if you don't learn cursive, you literally cannot read the founding documents of your country as they were written. And to me, like, I'm not big on the state or anything, obviously, but like, I do think that's important. I do think it's important to know where you are and how you got here and understand how those things happen. Thomas Jefferson didn't sit down with a typewriter or a word processor, right? They hand wrote these documents. And I think that our children should be able to read the founding documents of their country as they were written.
Absolutely. And it's like having mass in Latin when nobody speaks Latin in the room, and church operated that way for a long time. Then things changed, and the average person were like, okay, well, I can read this too, and I can understand this.
Yeah. For me, it wasn't Latin. It was Ukrainian. You go to high mass in the Ukrainian Catholic Church, and the priest is out there with his back to you speaking Ukrainian, and they're like, pay attention. I I don't know what's happening. You know?
Yeah. So I like the conveyor belt analogy. That made a
Yeah.
lot of sense to me. And you know, some days, hey, maybe he gets an hour of schoolwork done and he didn't get everything we needed. You know, tomorrow, maybe instead of doing the required 4 hours that Tennessee says you're supposed to do every day, we can do 3. We'll just squeeze those together and we'll make it a day. So I do keep a little log of what we've accomplished in a day and each day. So I can go back and see when we're productive and what all we've done, and it's good.
I mean, I think you have to like accept the advantage that you have as a home educator, because you can tell when a kid's done. Even when they're trying to pretend they're paying attention, they just can't anymore. And talking more at that point or forcing more information at that point is a waste, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like one of the things that helps homeschool parents is coming to peace with, we're done for the day, or we're done for, you know what? Go, the kid will run out and play with a football or something. Go take a break. Go take 30 minutes off. Come back in, reset. Like, and you know, you're an entrepreneur, so you know, like there are times when things have to happen in your business. Like, even though we had technical difficulties and I had a generator leaking and other things going on right before we started, like, we're going to get this thing done because we've set a time for an interview. There's a lot of other stuff in your business that you have a lot of flexibility with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the wonderful part of being an entrepreneur, right? That you get to make those calls. And we should be teaching our children how to build that and design that into their own life and giving them some control. Again, as long as the stuff gets done in a timely manner, the more control they have, the more buy-in I think you get from them as well.
I think so. And you know, on those days when he is checked out and struggling in front of the computer, and I think he's over there working, but then I can see from my end on my computer what he's actually accomplished. I'm like, dude, what are you doing over there? And he says, I'm just daydreaming. And he feels defeated at that moment. And sometimes he says, you know, I just want to go back to school. I'm like, you want to go back to school for 8 hours a day and come home with homework? Like, are you sure? And you know, these are, so he kind of goes back and forth, and sometimes he's not feeling great about it. But then when we go do fun things and take field trips with other homeschool students, because there's groups around here, and all they do is get group buy-ins on field trips. So we've done some really cool things and met some other kids. And, you know, so those things are a blast. And last week we were in Wisconsin ice fishing with some buddies while his friends were in school. So like, you can't like, when we're there, I'll remind him like, so you still want to go back to school? Like, would you rather be back in the classroom right now or out here in Wisconsin on this lake? This is kind of neat.
Yeah. What gets mine is when they look out the window at like 4:30 and a school bus pulls up and lets the kids across the street off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they're like, oh, we've been screwing off for 3 hours now.
Yeah.
And they're just getting off the bus, you know. And how much time do you really spend on school versus like before you started doing this? Because I'm actually kind of dumbfounded at how much time kids give up of their life to the modern education system. My niece, you know, and she was taking AP courses and stuff, but still she was going to school, you know, 8-9 hours a day. And she was doing 2 to 3 hours of homework a day, you know, and you talk to the teachers and they say, well, I only give, you know, half an hour of homework. Yeah, but the kid has 4 teachers and they're all given half an hour of homework, or 5 or 6 teachers. And, you know, on average, they're all 2 to 3 hours of homework. And like I said, they're spending 2 hours a day a lot of times, and they're done, and they're actually working ahead at that speed.
Absolutely. So, and that was something that we had a conversation last year, and I said, dude, like, if you think about school and you think about the time you spend lining up, getting ready to go to lunch, getting ready to go to class, when you take out the, hey, how was everybody's weekend, and that sort of socializing thing, how much actual work do you think you do? And you know, he figured it's about half, maybe, like, you know, so half the time of the day is just kind of logistics of running a classroom in a school and managing kids. So when I look at it and I'm trying to compare, well, how much time am I spending as a parent? Because this affects me too.
Yeah.
Where before, like, okay, I make his breakfast, I make his lunch, I get him, wake him up, and we have that fight every morning, and he gets ready for school, and then we run out the door by the seat of our pants trying to get there on time. And we got a couple school zones to go through before we get there, and then we sit in the line and I drop him off. And now I take a deep breath, like, whew, that was crazy. And now let me see what I'm doing for the rest of my day, and I'll go off to my work day. And then in the afternoon to go sit in the school line and pick him up. And, I have to drive there twice a day, and then come home. And now maybe we have homework to manage. When I take all that stuff out and the state asks us to do 4 hours of actual work in the day, well, I'm not teaching him for 4 hours. He's mostly self-directed over there and, doing his work at his own pace. So like, I'm not spending 4 hours actually engaged in his schoolwork. It's more like an hour or two. So if I'm engaging with him an hour or two, the time in my day hasn't changed. It's taking up pretty much the same amount of time, whether he's in school or at home. It just looks different. What I'm doing is different. And I'm not dealing with the stress of getting him ready, out the door, on a deadline, picking him up on time, because Nashville traffic's getting crazier all the time. And with my home inspection business, when I was inspecting houses, I might be in one of the other cities close to here, Murfreesboro or Clarksville or Spring Hill, trying to get back to, a school pickup at a certain time. And honestly, I didn't always make it on time. There was, a few times during the year where, I'm trying to get there and I'm going to end up being 15 minutes late. And I'm sorry, but this is what happened when you close the daycares for COVID. I'm doing my best, guys.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. Parents probably spend about the same amount of time they already do, and they just don't realize it. And the one that benefits the most, and I'm fine with this, is the kids. The kids are the ones that are spending a fraction of the time to get the same, or in my opinion, a better education. And I love the flexibility. And yesterday, my wife took the kids to the library for a while and picked some books out, and like they can pick whatever they want as long as they're reading books. And like, that's life. I think that one of the biggest problems I have with the state system, beyond all the COVID crap, is that it's not like real life. There's no place, and this is why I get people that are teachers or love teachers pissed off at me. I'm not putting down the person, it's the system. But teachers are generally out of touch with reality. And not because they're bad people, because they've not experienced reality. Most teachers have never had a professional job other than being a teacher. So maybe they worked part-time, as a waiter or something like that while they were going through college or whatever. But when I say full-time work, I mean, you go to work, you pay your bills, you deal with all of the things with being a full-time employee. You're working for advancement, doing all that. You come home and you live in that real world. Well, they go to school, then they go to college, then they go back into a school, and they've never been in that sort of a meritocracy. So they lose a connection to reality, and they expect things from children that those children, when they become young adults, will never have to do again, unless they too become teachers and go back into an institution. Like, you don't go to your office job and have the guy at the next cubicle lean over and thump you in the head, and that's okay, right? That's assault. That's not reality. You don't get forced to eat with somebody you don't like, or be with somebody you don't like, right? And if you don't like a job, you go get another job, you create a business. Like, there's nothing about the way we formulaically put these kids into a room, crammed in with 20 to 30 other kids in this structured manner. The only thing even close to it's the military, and the military is more reality than school. And I say that as a former soldier. And I think it gives us such an advantage for our kids, or in my case, my grandkids, to be educating them this way, because they're able to now start building the life they want much younger and figure out that, hey, it's going to be up to me to build my life. Because I think the biggest disservice to our kids in the government school system today is we condition them to believe a falsehood. Way more false and way more damaging than the people that worry about, we tell the kids, Santa Claus stories, right? And that is that if I just go to school every day and I study hard and I get good grades, when I get out, everything will be good. It doesn't work that way. right? It doesn't work that way at all. When you go to get your first job and you say, I got straight A's, the guy's like, I don't care. I don't care. Can you shovel shit out of a horse stable, right? I mean, that's what the guy wants to know. Or when you get a profession, like I know people who go out of college and they have like a master's degree, they never had a job. And they live with that fantasy the whole way through the situation. And then they graduate and they're like, I have a master's degree. I'm worth 80 grand a year. And no, you're not. No, you have no experience. Where I think when we bring kids through this path, they're getting so much input on what they're doing that they're able to kind of lay the groundwork to have that knowledge that I'm going to have to do something beyond show up and present my little report card. Because I even know grown adults that are very miserable. And I'm talking people older than me. And you can tell what it is that their life didn't work out the way they planned. And they were good students. They did go to school. They did work hard in school. They did get good grades. But life just didn't work out. And I feel like this path prepares children a lot better, if that makes sense.
It totally does. And I know some real screw ups who make a lot of money. And, you know, the people who growing up, teachers like this guy just cracks jokes and slacks off and he can't focus. And, you know, those type of people make great salesmen because they're a lot of fun to be around and they have people skills. And when people, one of the biggest objections, especially from women, right, is that how will your child get socialized? They need to be around other kids. I don't get that much from guys, but women, it's a real concern. And like you said, this is not normal socialization. And I'm not trying to raise a child. I'm trying to raise a man. So if he spends a lot of time with adults doing adult things, you know, learning about business and how to give a presentation in front of a group of people, because I do teaching and some coaching and stuff. Like that's a good thing. These are the skills he needs to learn. He needs to learn how to meet a stranger, connect, and how to act in that type of society, not the school system. I think that he does need time to be a kid too, right? We need to play a little grab ass and goof off on the playground. And those opportunities are there. You know, there's scouts, there's field trips with homeschooling students. You can put them in jiu-jitsu. There's all sorts of cool stuff that kids can do and be around other kids, you know? So we can do those opportunities. You don't need a steady diet of that sort of thing. That's, I think, not as beneficial.
No, I agree. And you know, the whole socialization thing is to me, it's retarded. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, they play sports. My granddaughter's in cheerleading. Like there's all kinds of ways to get your kids involved with other kids. And then they get that thing called voluntary association with the kids that they're with. Like no one makes them be friends. And if you have a kid, you know, when you do like cheerleading, it's not like at school mean girls thing or whatever. Like it's a private thing and you put the girls in it and whatever. If there's a kid that's really a problem, they go away. No one tolerates that. When you have a sports team, like you put the kid in basketball or football or whatever, if one of the kids on the team is a jerk, you know, it's like, hey, you talk to the parents and say, you either square Johnny away or Johnny's not welcome here. Like it's because that's actually the real world. People choose who they associate with and who they don't associate with. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's one of the problems I think that the school system's created now is that they've actually convinced kids that that's wrong. You shouldn't be able to choose who you have to be nice to and get along with everybody. And I'm okay with being nice with people and get along with people as is required. I don't want to be a jerk to anybody unless I really need to be. And I want to be able to get along, like as long as necessary that you can go do what you do and I can go back to doing what I do. But long-term forced association, that's only going to lead to problems. To me, there were problems when I was a kid, and they're going back to the 80s here again, you know, but nothing like what I see today. Nothing like it's the same pattern, but it's just much worse because I think there's much more of this whole, you have to be integrated with every other single person around you at all times. And that's just not how humans are wired. We don't work that way. Even in families, when everybody loves each other, still people have like, you get a group together, certain groups kind of form and have conversations. The guys talk about football and women talk about whatever they want to talk about. And there's interaction and moving back and forth. But there is kind of this you go to a party, people voluntarily associate, and that whole thing has been taken away from our children.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So what does your son think about all this? He's there correcting you, which we've had a few people call out and say it's pretty cool. I mean, generally homeschool kids get concerned about accuracy and things,
Yeah.
But how does he think about all this?
It's a great experiment. I'll definitely say that much. And for the most part, he's doing a fantastic job. Sometimes he's hard on himself. Like I said, when he does space out and he doesn't quite get accomplished what the expectation is for the day. And then I'll just try to reel that back in and say, well, hey, look where this shows. Like, it shows all of your English skills on a 6th grade level. Like you've already, for all practical purpose, finished the 5th grade in English. We're still going to do this stuff, but like, look how good you're doing. And math, look where you were and look where you are today. So that, he, like I said, sometimes he gets hard on himself there. And then he has those feelings of, well, maybe I need to go back to school next year. And next year is going to be different. So that was part of why this year made a whole lot of sense, is that we bought some land about an hour out of Nashville, and we're going to be moving either in the spring or during the summer. I felt like this year we were probably going to be moving out of this school zone anyway. So instead of disrupting that, it's like, well, let's take this experiment. If it goes really good, it'll probably work out awesome next year too. He's enjoyed a lot of it, and he likes the cool stuff that we get to do. We're going to a bladesmithing, knife making seminar to learn some forging this weekend. So we're going to be 2 days in Kentucky doing that. So he's definitely enjoying those extracurricular things that are way outside of what school is.
And one of the things I like to kind of reinforce with him when he gets hard on himself for spacing out or whatever is that conveyor belt analogy. Like, that's going to happen. We all do that. That's a thing. So if you do it in school, then the conveyor rolls on, and when you get back on it, you're behind. If you do it at home, you just stop.
Yeah.
Stop for now. And then you go back in and you re-enter where you exited. And that was hard for us at first, because we felt this huge burden that, like, since we had convinced my son and my daughter-in-law to let us do this, like, we have to make sure that they're, and, we'd sit and we'd think, what, they're doing way more and way better than they would be doing in school, because everybody spaces out. Everybody screws off, period.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very disruptive. Where in a homeschool environment, it's almost not even it's only a thing if you make it a thing. And that's for the kid and for the parent both. Like, if you become at peace with, right now, I've done as much everything, and this is what adults do, right? We're trying to raise adults. We're not trying to raise children. We're trying to bring children into adulthood. So every single person, even if you're reading a book you love, reaches a point, that's it. That's as much as I can read right now. And you close the book and you put a bookmarker in it and you leave. School, in that situation that we put these kids in, is more like it's an audio book. And when you tune out, it keeps playing. And if you tune out for an hour, you missed an hour of the story and you're completely lost when you came back in. Where if you hit the pause button and hit play again, you're right back where you started. And that's an advantage. And I just think that when people start worrying about, like, if they're falling behind or whatever, if you're falling behind, you're even better off, to me, that you're in homeschool, because it still doesn't matter. Like, we work with Excelis, and they're like, you do it at your speed. If the kid wants to, like, sprint through science and get that done in a quarter of the year, and then take longer on English because there's not as strong an English student, then fine. It doesn't matter. Like, we need to, like, use all the advantages this actually gives us. And that way, because it doesn't matter how fast you go through something. What matters is, at the end of it, can you still do it? Did you parrot it or did you learn it? And I think that, like, sometimes it takes a person longer to learn one set of skills than another. And that another person will flip-flop that. And that's the beauty of this flexibility, that, like, you move faster on the things you can go faster with and slower on the things you can go slower with, and it's okay.
Yeah. And some things, it's amazing. It's like, you did that whole section in 4 minutes. Like, what just happened there? Like, you just blew through it, and some things take a little longer. And when they do, then, You know, we're going to slow down. It gives me an opportunity to teach. The good thing about IXL, the course that he's using, the website that he's using, is that they don't pass it until they understand it. When they start getting questions wrong, their level of completion, if they're at 80%, well, now they're moving backwards. So not only do they have to get those things right, but they're going to be doing more questions to get back to 80, which is real world stuff. I mean, it's not like, okay, well, I just taught the kids everything they were supposed to know. Friday, we're having a test, study this at home. It's like you get the instant feedback right then. And when you're done, you've moved on to the next thing.
What has this decision done for like your overall quality of life? I think that's something that people really kind of need a little bit of a push to understand, that it actually makes the quality of life better.
I agree. We are spending way more time together. This is time in a very fundamental part of his life where, you know, if I give that to somebody else, like, then they're raising my child for me. And you know, we all need that idea that it takes a village to raise a child. I don't disagree. I can't do it all myself, and I wouldn't want to. I want him to get some different viewpoints and things, but we really get to buckle down together and spend more time together. So the quality of life is great. We have a lot of opportunities, you know, so we get to bond and we get to do cool stuff. It forces me to do more cool stuff because I don't want him, you know, cooped up in the house all day, every day. That's not my goal here. I'm not trying to be isolationist in that way. So, you know, it forces me to be creative. You know, like we have to, well, what exactly do I want him to know? I have to kind of evaluate, you know, how we're gonna make the most of this time. So I appreciate the challenges that brings. It allows me to set my own priorities, right? And his too, and he gets a voice in that as well. You know, I do get pushback, and a certain part of this is, dude, you know what? I know you don't want to do it, and I know you're not interested in this, but we also have to learn how to do things just because we have to do them, and that's a tough lesson to grasp, but it's important because some people never learn that, and I don't think they fare that well in a lot of ways.
Yeah, we definitely deal with that. My grandson is golden until he gets a writing assignment, because that's actual work. That's not just answering questions, reading, learning, and then regurgitating. Like, that's actual work. That's actually going to take time, you know, and it actually gets judged and it gets graded, and then you actually have to fix it where it was wrong, and maybe you have to redo a whole thing. But when we get there, we use that flexibility, just saying, okay, so we're not doing science and history today. You're going to do your writing assignment today until you're done with it. And if you need to take 5 breaks during the day, go ahead and do it. It's okay. It's all right. But you're going to do it, and you're going to get through with it. And it's very much a time management skill I use. When I have things that need to get done in a week, and I have it's going to be one of those weeks where by the end of the week, I'm ready to pull my hair out and drink 5 martinis. And I know it's going to be that way. I know what I'm going to do if I let myself do it. I'm going to take all the stuff I really don't want to do, and I'm going to put it at the bottom of the list, and I'm going to do all the things I don't mind doing or I enjoy doing, and then that's going to be the whole end of the week is going to be all the shit that I didn't want to do, and some of it's not going to get done. So what I do is I'll go, except for things that have to be done, putting the show out or whatever, these things, taxes or whatever, are going to the front of the list, and I'm going to do the shit that I hate the most first, and I will push everything out of the way till that's done. And as soon as that's done, then the rest just, well,
yeah. Let's eat your frogs first, I think. Is
right?
the
Yeah.
idea.
I like frogs, so maybe it's like eat your slugs first or something, right? Like, you know, or worms first or whatever. But that's a time management skill that every single entrepreneur and single person I know successful in business, and a lot of like the sciences and stuff too. There's like the methodical, boring part you don't want to do. Everybody that really excels learns to do that. You pull the crap to the front, you do the crap first, and then you roll through. And we can teach that in homeschool environment. And to be fair to teachers who I do beat up on at times, they can't do it that way. Like if you're a teacher today and you're teaching like 6th grade and you teach English, you have a group of kids come in every 45 minutes and you teach today's lesson and then they go away. And you have to do that. Like there is no flexibility. There's no way around that. And if they're struggling with your English assignment that you gave them and you're willing to work with them, that's fine, after school or what have you, or study hall. But what you can't do is say, you know what, screw Mr. Smith's science assignment, right? Screw Mr. Smith. Just don't work on Mr. Smith's science assignment. Get through this, and then you can go back and do your science. Like Mr. Smith's going to come down and crack you in the head, man. Like you can't be doing that with my students. But as homeschoolers, we have that complete flexibility. And I think that a lot of people that fear doing this, if they realize, because I want to kind of push here toward the end, like we talked about before we did this interview, kind of pushing people off the fence and getting them to do it. Like people think that there's going to be this really like it'll only be as regimented as you make it. And you have all this flexibility, and it makes your job actually a lot easier, to be fair, than a teacher's job. But I won't say that it's, and you've probably experienced this too. It's probably not going to be that way in your first couple of weeks. You feel so much pressure as a new homeschooler, but once you learn to let go, all of this stuff makes sense, and it gets really easy, really fast.
Yeah, we're getting there. We still had some stress, and coming back from the holidays, there was a bit of challenge there of getting back in the routine. And I feel like, you know what? Even that's not real life. I mean,
no,
I don't get to take a month off from work. Business. No, I work every day. And it's there's a book called Chop Wood, Carry Water, and it's just doing the basic things we need to survive and live and keep things on the right track. And I feel like we would have done better to break away from the structured school year where, hey, we take all summer off. Like, that too isn't the real world. So, having to go back and look at that, I think just some real simple, that, hey, we put a little work in every single day would have been beneficial for us. And that transition would have been so easy, because once you do find a good rhythm and a routine, it's not hard or complex
until you break it, like you're saying, and then getting them back in. Like there's always a little bit, because they're our grandkids, so they're usually not here during the weekend. So they go home on Friday, they come back on Monday. Now we got to get back into it.
I'm okay with that. That it was just the long break.
The summer, so like what we did with the summer especially, it's really long. So we did this year and we kind of figured this out as we were going, exactly the problem you're talking of. We said, pick a subject. And we had them do school through the summer. But the one subject.
Yeah.
And then when the school year started, the 4 core courses, one's gone. Like you almost can't move them slow enough to not plod through that and be done with it by the end of summer. Like, in fact, it was, August and he was done, like the beginning of August. And it's like, well, now pick something else, because we never wanted to get out of the concept that every day at some point you're going to pull the stuff out and you're going to do some work and you're going to do some learning. And even when we hit some like, it's only 2 more weeks and you're going to start everything back up. Like, okay, well then like you're going to read a book for a half hour a day or something, like something that continues to make progress. Cause I don't know about you, when I do shut down, cause I shut down in the winter myself. I shut down from before Christmas and I come back after New Year's. And I've done that almost my whole professional life. I used to be in comm, and when you're in telecom, like that's the kind of time of the year where like you lay off all your contractors and it's easy to take off. And I just kind of carried that through. But when I do that, it's great for a few days. And then I kind of start looking around like I got to do something, like, I'm just like, the business is not growing and it's okay. But like, I want to get back into it. I want to do something. And that's because I love what I do. And I think that part of the reason kids look so forward, I know I did when I was a kid, I looked forward to summer so much. I didn't want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can make them want to learn, not even make them want to learn, like open up the how amazing learning is for them so they can see it, then they want to learn and they get really excited about it. And like you said, I do think you're right, though. Keeping them doing something in those long absences is really going to make your life easier when you have to go all the way back to it.
Mm-hmm. And letting them choose is a big deal, because, until they start picking their classes in high school, kids don't have much of a say at all, besides maybe what they wear to school. And even that in Nashville, it's just like, hey, what color shirt you going to wear?
Yeah.
Because they do have to wear uniforms here.
Oh, wow.
So, having some choices and a little bit of say in their life is I think a good thing.
No, uniforms I'm out on too. I went to Catholic school until they threw me out. I should say until I got myself thrown out intentionally. I did not dig the uniform thing at all. Like, because that is like, you're a kid, you have so little you control, and now you're taking away my ability to express myself in my clothing. Are you kidding me? And I know the argument for it is then, like, since everybody wears the same, nobody gets picked on for their clothes or whatever. And like, why don't you get better at disciplining the children in your school then? Right. My kid is supposed to wear like whatever the hell you say, because somebody might get picked on for their shoes or their shirt or, their brand or whatever. No, that's not real life. You don't get to like go through life saying everybody should be, it's equity instead of equality, right? Like everybody should be brought down to the same level so that nobody excels too far above anybody else. It's the Harrison Bergeron reality is what it's become. What would you say to the person that listens to this? And, I've kind of said a lot of people out there in the audience, they don't really want to homeschool, and that's fine. If that's not what you want to do, that's not what you want to do. It's the people that are in the middle that I always want to push, right? Because I would like to, and then all the excuses come out. What would you say to that person as far as the fact that you can overcome whatever you think you can?
Right. So, and I can appreciate that a lot of people have challenges with their own personal schedule. Not everybody is an entrepreneur at the point in their business where they can manage this. Some people are road warriors, and I've taken my son with me on the road doing things. Like I said, I drag him places with me, and those create unique opportunities, and that can be made to work too. There's a million reasons, a million buts we can create, but this, but that, but we can make all kind of excuses for everything in our life. And as an entrepreneur, people say, yeah, but you don't understand. Sure, we all have those buts, and we can overcome them. So being open to making that jump. Well, now I have to ask myself what needs to happen, what's standing in the way of this goal. And then I have to rely on some resourcefulness. There's co-op programs out there where people can drop their kids off in a co-op environment where, okay, I can't do it every day. And now we got a positive but if I join this program, there will be some support, so people can help me. Now, in a co-op program, a parent has to agree and they have to volunteer to do some teaching too. So they're going to be responsible for being around some other kids and, kind of watching over somebody else's kids a little bit. So those opportunities are out there, and you can band together with maybe some people in your neighborhood or at your church. Like I said, it's a matter of being resourceful. I do have the ability, like I said, to do it kind of on my own. And he's at an age where he's old enough where sometimes I have to leave him here by himself and, trust that he's going to get his work done while I'm gone. And I'll tell him before I leave, like, look, man, hey, I'm going to be gone for 3 or 4 hours. I really hope when I come back, all your work's done and we can just kick it for the rest of the afternoon or go do something fun. And if it's not, then you had your fun while I was gone, and it'll be time to work then.
Isn't that how a job works, though? That's how your bosses, like, they don't sit there and watch you work. They're like, hey, I need the numbers by Friday morning. And if you don't have them Friday morning, your ass is in a sling and you're breaking your neck to get them as quick as you can at that point. And you deal with the consequences and you learn from it, right?
Absolutely. And one of the funny things is when, my mom's like, what? You're leaving him home by himself? I like, my eyes roll to the back of my head. I'm like, Mom, what? Like, I was this latchkey kid. And when I was his age and even younger, like, I woke up by an alarm clock and I got myself ready for school and I caught the bus. She was a nurse and she was already at work. So no, this isn't any different just because it's 2022.
No, same here, man. I didn't get rides to school. I mean, when you were a little like kindergarten kid or whatever, but like by the time I was in like second grade or whatever, like either walk to school or walk to the bus stop. And when I got out of school, most of the time nobody was home. Like, I said, like we weren't really, my generation, a lot of us, we weren't latchkey kids. Like that's what they call us. We were more like woods kids. Because
Right.
like when we got home, we went in and we ate a snack and we went and played in the woods until dinner time, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
as
Built
long
a,
as no one called mom or dad and told them we were doing some shit we weren't supposed to be doing, it was all good.
yeah, built a fort in the woods, and
Yeah.
we did some stuff we shouldn't have been doing. Absolutely, and we lived through it, and that's okay. Be a little dangerous in your life. There's nothing wrong with that, and letting kids do scary things, and not trying to coddle them and shelter them as much as
Yeah, you're on something there. I think that, and it's partly the school and it's partly us, we have overcompensated. When I was a kid, and I'm talking like 10, 11, 12, we would run around on our bikes. We would build these big ass ramps. We had these apartment complex I lived in had like these islands that are like big mounds of dirt, and we would like carve into them and make these huge jumps that were dangerous as shit. We did this once in a while. We wiped out or whatever. We wore no helmet, no pads, no nothing. Like, and we had those horrible pedals. If you slipped off, you skinned your shin and whatever. And I'm not saying that's exactly where you should be. Like when we raced BMX and all, we had helmets and gear and all. But when I see somebody with their kid at the park, okay, and it's like a 4-year-old little kid, and they're on a bicycle, like a 8-inch bicycle with training wheels, that maximum that kid can move that bike at is about 3 miles an hour. And that kid's in a helmet, gloves, elbow pads, and knee pads. And like I said, pedaling his ass off and moving like this. You just go, what are we doing? And then you wonder why that kid's going to grow up and be overly cautious and not, when they come work for somebody like me and I give them something to do, they'll do it. But when I come back and go, well, what else did you do? They say nothing because they're afraid to take any kind of initiative or chance because something bad will happen. And I mean, I've dealt with that, hiring kids to be farmhands and stuff like that. They just won't take any risk. And I know people will say you're overreacting, but I think if you're gearing up a 5-year-old on a bike with training wheels as though they're going to go race motocross, I think you're out of touch with reality, and that kid's going to end up out of touch with reality.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing you know, everybody be walking around with a face mask on all the time. Because you might breathe the wrong air and die. Like, I mean, that's like, how do you think we got here?
And when you take the training wheels off and they're going to crash and there's going to be a skint knee or an elbow, probably a great day to utilize some pads. And let's get through that hurdle and they're riding a bike. Well, then you probably don't need them every time again. Like, it's going to be okay. And being okay with our kids doing dangerous things it's another hurdle. A lot of parents want to protect their kids, but for the most part, I feel like they usually know their limits and know when to reel back a little. We had a day here. We had some Amazon boxes piling up by the front door. A lot of shipments came in that week. And I told him, hey, man, why don't you take those boxes around back and burn them in the fire pit? And he looks at me and his eyes get big. And he says, but Dad, I need some parental supervision. I'm like, all right, I'll watch you do it. That's fine. And so, he just wanted me to be near him in case something, in case the brush pile or something catches fire in the back. So, they kind of self-regulate, I think. So he went out there and I'm like, so what are you going to light it with? And he says, I'm probably just going to use some dryer lint and maybe some flint and steel. I'm like, okay, cool. Do that. And, Scouts has taught him different ways to make a fire. And, he burned up the boxes. He just felt a little more safe with somebody there.
Man, that was a job I had that I didn't mind when I was a kid. We lived in a place with private trash removal. So you paid by, you could have so much per week that they would take away for you. And so because of that, you got rid of anything that didn't have to go in the truck that you could. So we burned all our paper, and we had a great big barrel, and I would go out every day or every other day and burn all the paper and cardboard and stuff like that. And that was a job I had to do. Like, I got in trouble if I didn't do it.
It's a great responsibility. He's taken CPR classes and first aid classes and other stuff too. So I like to roll those sorts of things in. And, so well, worst case scenario, he burns himself. He kind of knows what to do with it. It's probably not going to be a severe burn, but if he gets cut, well, we've talked about that. Let's put that into practice now.
Yeah. I mean, it's people get cut. People get minor burns. People get scrapes. People break bones. It happens. That's why we have a medical system, right? Like, I'm not saying to be reckless with reckless abandon, but we can't live in a bubble wrap society anymore. I mean, really. And it's become what the schools are like. Nobody can have a peanut because somebody might be allergic to peanuts, right? So when I was in school, if you were allergic to peanuts, you didn't eat peanuts.
Yeah.
You didn't expect none of the other kids to not eat, like that kind of that. And that when that started, years and years ago, and I would talk about it, people are like, oh, you're overreacting. You don't understand. And I'm like, but I know where this leads.
Right. And
that was what I think people struggled with, is all these things were slowly implemented. It was, it's just that. Oh, it's just no more peanut butter sandwiches. It's just, it's just 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Right. It's just till the end of this year that the schools will be closed down. It's just for 2 weeks because Johnny got a sniffle, or like that same incrementalism has been actually working at this since we were in school. I can think back and go, oh, now I get why that thing was done and how that changed and how that led to this thing. But when you're in the middle of it, I don't think it's easy to see.
No, and those are things that I did see, and those are things that bother me. And I feel like this is one of the best ways that we can course correct on some of those things that our children are getting exposed to, indoctrinated to, not that it's all malicious or anything. I'm not a conspiracy theorist there, but when I see it, I'm like, that's just insidious. Like, I know they are doing their best to protect children. This protectionist mentality is there, and they just don't want people to get hurt, and they want everybody to get along. And I think, many times the heart's in the right place, but something's lacking in
What do we lose in return for more safety, even if we're really getting more safety? Because how many kids are, committing suicide now compared to 30 years ago or what have you? But like when I got a 7th grade, right? So you're talking junior high, I guess, right? When I got a 7th grade, I knew how to use a bandsaw. I knew how to use a joiner. I knew how to use a lathe, right? I knew how to use a jigsaw. I knew how to use chisels. Just about any power tool, chop saw, a radial arm saw, planer. I knew how to use all that. I wasn't great at it, but I had some practical experience and I knew how to do it, right? Like all those shop classes, have been ripped out. 8th grade, I had metal shop. I learned how to TIG weld and MIG weld and spot weld. And I learned how to cut sharp metal with sharp tools, and how if I measured something wrong, the piece of sheet metal wouldn't care about my feelings. Right? It would be like, you cut me too short. There's no such. I remember my metal shop teachers, dude, Mr. Watts. He's like, if you had wood shop, you need to know something. When you take metal shop, there's no such thing as metal dough. If you cut it too short, it's gone, and you're gonna have to deal with it. And I learned that a power tool didn't care about my feelings either, and would cut my finger off. Fortunately, I never cut my finger off, but I learned that. And so by removing shop classes, maybe there's been a few injuries that didn't happen. But what have we gained? We gained a generation of young people that can't do the things that not special people could do, that everybody could do, right? We all know people that are like really great craftsmen. They make cabinetry or something like that, or they're custom home builders, and they take these skills to the ultimate level. But when I was a kid, there wasn't a 15-year-old kid that if you would have said, hey, take this saw and this tape measure and this pencil, and go take that piece of 2x6 over there, measure it 14.5 feet, and cut the end off of it. They couldn't have just went, oh, okay. They might not have. They might have found an excuse if they didn't want to do it, but they had the skill set to do that. And that's not exactly a complicated thing. And we don't have kids able to do that when they come out of high school now.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't even have shop was an, elective, right? But they don't even have the option. It's insane to me that we actually think we're hurting our children. Like the people that think we're hurting our kids. There was somebody made a comment in the stream here, like every homeschool kid I've ever met is been weird. And I'm like, then you need to meet more people, because the way, and I'll tell you, I used to think that way, but this was a long time ago. Before this really became what it is today, there was a very small number of people at homeschool, and not all of them, but a lot of them were because the kid just couldn't be in school. They were picked on or whatever, to the point where, like, we're going to do this. So that kid might not naturally be extremely socially introverted or something like that. Now, the way I know I'm dealing with a homeschool kid, when I'm dealing with a kid that's 14 and I meet them and they're like, how you doing? And they put their hand out and they put their shoulders back and they shake my hand, and I feel that tension, like, and the way they conduct themselves, and they're here compared to their peers that are down here. And I'm instantly like, oh, you're homeschooled. And it's in the best way possible. And it's because, like you said, they're around adults, right? You're on your best behavior around your parents. Like, you know, I mean, really, like kids get away with everything in school now, because, to be fair to teachers, we've really hurt teachers, right? Like, teachers can't use any real discipline anymore in school. Kids get away with everything. My sister-in-law's a teacher. She said, like, all the girls want to do is physically fight with each other. And I'm like, I would have got my ass kicked in school for that. Nope, can't really do anything. Send them to the principal, they send them right back, whatever. And yeah, when they're around you, they're going to, like, hey, dad's watching. And then when they're around you and your cohorts, then they're going to come up to your level. One of my best friends, what he does, he sends his kid in the summer, he'll send him with one of his good friends he knows is a good man, and say, you know, you're going to go with Matt, and he does computer programming. You're going to go sit in his office with him, and you can do other things, but you're going to see what his job's like. And then the next week you're going to go with Toby, or you're going to go here, right? And, like, so then he moves around and he sees all these different opportunities.
That's amazing.
Out there. But you're also with adults. And so if he's in some guy's office, he's seeing that guy's boss come in and go, hey, we need to work on this part of the code or whatever it is. And he's actually seeing the way adults conduct business. And I think that brings people up. Like, one of the life lessons really is, like, you don't really have time in your life to be surrounded by people who are not making you a little bit better in some way. Like, I don't expect every person I know to be better than me at everything, because then I'd be the drag down, right? But, like, when I have a good friend that I actually will spend my time with, I want there to be something about him as a man and his character and the way he conducts himself that I want to be a little bit more like. And I hope that I have something that I can offer back. And when you spend your time around people like that, you become a better man or a better woman over time. If you spend all your time around kids fighting for a pecking order, then you're a perpetual kid fighting for a pecking order. And so I completely agree kind of with where you've come from with this, that by being around adults, they act more like adults.
Right. So, and this week I'm onboarding, we've got a new employee. He's coming in as a business development manager, a sales manager. And so, like, we're here at our dining table, meeting from 8 a.m. till noon. And then that employee is going out into the field to shadow home inspectors to learn that side of the business too. So here we have HR, onboarding, contracts, negotiations, sales calls. Like, we are doing so much that he has that exposure to. And, you know, is he engaged in it? A little bit. He's over there and they see everything, right? So he's doing his work, but he's also seeing what's going on. He gets to hear the calls. I had a call with the client with an issue today. I did that on speakerphone, so everybody got the benefit of that call. Our new business development manager, because he'll probably be handling some of those issues that do arise in the future. Every business deals with them. And then we did payroll this morning. So I showed him how to do payroll. And my son knows, hey, these guys get paid for what they do and they pay taxes. And this is what it looks like. And this is where they got some bonuses for good things they did. And look, nobody did the good things. Nobody's getting the bonuses this week. So it's so diverse. And we did a woodworking project this year, a Christmas gift for a buddy of mine's wife. He's a retired Green Beret, and she wanted to put all his cool stuff in this massive shadow box. And I know somebody with a amazing commercial woodworking shop, and I called in a favor and say, hey, can we do this? And we're gonna get a Cub Scout badge for it in the process, and we're gonna have some school stuff in here too, so we can get multiple uses out of it. So getting that exposure to the woodworking stuff and doing a bladesmithing class next week, like you said, these are all lost arts. And when we choose to homeschool our kids, we can fill in those gaps in an amazing way.
Yeah, and what you see now when you look at YouTube University, is what I call it, all these channels that teach you how to do things, there's a tremendous demand by this entire generation, this millennial generation, which is no longer young people. Millennials are like 40 now almost, right? The oldest millennials, I think, are close to 40 years of age now. It might actually be like 41 might be the oldest millennials by that now. But they are the ones that are watching these YouTube channels on how to do wood turning. Or you look at some of the cooking channels, right? Like Pro Home Cooks with like 2.7 million subscribers. They're not all old people like us, right? It's all of these young folks that, younger than us folks, I guess, that didn't learn these skills coming up. And now they're going back and self-teaching themselves these things. And that tells you leaving it out of their educational path was a huge mistake. It was a huge mistake. And, it continues to be a mistake that it doesn't look like anybody wants to correct inside the institutions. And one of the things I said during the intro that you weren't here for was that I believe that everybody should look at doing this, even the people that believe in reforming the system, because I think it's the only thing that gets their attention. You can go to school board meetings, you can complain, you can even run for the school board, what have you. I'm glad if you do, and I wish you the best if you try. But what actually gets their attention is when their enrollment goes down 10% in the next cycle. And if they ever reform it, and I'm not saying, but if they ever do, it will be at the point where they go, a quarter of Americans are homeschooling their kids. I think that will be like the earth-shattering Paul Revere moment of like, oh, we're totally losing control of everything. And I think right now we've doubled the number of homeschoolers each year for the last 2 years.
Whoa.
And I guarantee you that's got somebody's attention, right? That's you're starting to like worry about the way things are going. And at the same time, they're losing teachers. I was listening to, because I had to get in the car, so I made the mistake of turning talk radio on a couple days ago. And one lady called in and said in her district, they lost 18% of their teachers since COVID started.
That's crazy.
Went, I'm out, I'm done. And so they're leaving because they're fed up too, because I think what happens, teachers always get pissed when I do shows like this. I always get hate mail, right? But whenever I ask them about, well, do you get to teach the way that you want to or whatever? If you can get them to make one complaint about their system and you say, well, that's not so bad, then they open up and then they just go. And then you're like, well, why don't you change it for the inside? And I know the answer, right? But you ask anyway, because that gets them to say it. And then they start, oh, you don't understand. There's this and there's that and there's this and I can't do this. And I'm like, so what you're saying is the system's broke. Because what it always comes down to is they want to be paid more. And it's like, but if I pay you more, none of those structural problems go away. And then we have lunacy. Like I got educated by a teacher out of Maryland. I'm like, you don't need a college degree to teach the third grade. And she's like, well, actually, after 5 years of teaching, you have to have a master's degree to teach the third grade, or you lose your license to teach in the state of Maryland.
Wow.
Well, that doesn't make any sense to me at all, because now what I've done is I've credentialed a person to the level of a master's degree. Well, their opportunities outside of the world of education, at least, secondary ed, is unlimited. They can go do something else now. Why would they stay in a broken system? So I don't think we can fix it with money. It's a structural problem. And,
yeah, that's really wild. We took a homeschool group field trip earlier this year to a Amish community down past Lewisburg, Tennessee, down south of Nashville. And you know who's teaching those kids? Older kids.
Oh, yeah.
So the 14, 15-year-old girls are teaching the kids to read and write and do math. And, once those kids are old enough to work, they're working around the house and the property, the farm, and they're selling they're selling and making change to the tourists that are coming in to buy stuff. And it's like, well, if they realize you only need a 6th grade education to teach 3rd graders, then why do we need a master's degree?
But that's what I've always said. Other than the maturity aspect of it, a 4th grader that got straight A's should be able to teach 2nd grade.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Other than the maturity. And when I say that, people get all out of sorts. I'm like, hold on. Either the 4th grader with straight A's can teach 2nd grade, or the system that produced a fourth grader that can get straight A's, that can't teach the fundamentals of second grade, is broken.
Mm-hmm.
You can pick one, but you can't have it both ways. Like either they can, and then that's actually the educational standard to teach second grade. And I'm sure there's some things like running a classroom and all that would, but you're not talking about a 4-year degree course here. You're talking about probably the best way we could probably be teaching teachers is sort of like a 6-month apprenticeship, like an assistant teacher, and then like kind of moving on from there and actually learning in school. Because if you're not going to teach college and you graduated high school, and the purpose is to help others graduate high school, you should be able to teach what you've done, or you didn't learn it. And I think that shows the flaw in the system, that you can get A's and you didn't learn. Because I guarantee you, if you just grabbed 30 to 40-year-olds off the street and gave them like their final exams from 10th grade, 90% will fail.
Mm-hmm.
So what did they learn? What did we get out of putting that kid through that school for, between $10,000 and $20,000 a year per student? What did we gain from that? And what we gained was compliance. That's what we gained. We gained compliance. So we gained training people to a schedule. This system, somebody had been talking about it here in the comment section, but it all goes back to the Prussian system. And it was designed for a time that doesn't even exist anymore. To be fair, if you went to school in 1890 and you learned to move when the bell rang and show up on time and do what you were told, when you got out, there was a million factory jobs for you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you got out of school, they said, well, if nothing else, I know you know how to do this and you can read, so I can give you an instruction manual, right? And then if you excel, we'll move you up. But today, like, that doesn't really buy much. Being able to just do what you're told, that's not really the American economy anymore, thank God.
It's definitely not. I had a experience. So when I was a full-time woodworker, I actually taught woodworking through Metro Public Schools in the form of adult education. So we have adults signing up. They want to learn how to make a table, or I got to pick the project. And one year on the first day, we had, 15, 16 people signed up to take this class that I had been teaching for 3 or 4 years. And after that first class, I had 3 people withdraw. And they went and they talked to the supervisor there, the director, and they said that, they could tell I didn't have a teaching degree and they weren't going to learn anything in the class. And by some weird happenstance, they were teachers, they were educators. So they were college trained. And, the instructor the director was really taken aback. He's like, what, Aaron? Like, we get rave reviews about what Aaron teaches, because I presented them with a ton of information and all kinds of handouts and printouts, and just we covered a lot of stuff. But just the fact that I wasn't a formally trained teacher with a degree, they couldn't handle that. And they didn't think that I could teach them anything, which is sad, because here I'm somebody who has been trained internationally in an amazing furniture history, that was passionate about it from the time I was 14, 15 years old, and had been doing this professionally, making a living, building furniture full time. And you don't have anything to learn from me because I'm not a teacher. Like, it's just a really weird mentality.
Absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate it today. This has gone almost an hour and a half now, so we need to wrap up. Do you want to take a moment here? I mean, we've talked all about homeschooling and the fact that anybody can do it, but you do run a business, and I know we have a pretty big contingency in Central Tennessee in the audience. You want to tell people quickly about your business and where they can learn more about it if they can use your services?
Sure. Yeah. So the company is Tennessee Home Inspectors. Our website is getaninspector.com. So it's really simple. We operate in all of Middle Tennessee. I've got somebody who lives Stewart County, Montgomery County line up around Clarksville, and we have inspectors in Murfreesboro. So we cover a really massive territory. If somebody just wants to have a maintenance inspection on their home, they're like, hey, I've been living here for 6 or 7 years. We'd be happy to come take a look at things, because what I've learned from, the thousands of inspections that we do is that most really expensive repairs are just simply minor issues that went undiagnosed and unaddressed for an extended period of time. So if we can help people catch things on the front end, it'll save them a lot of money and help their systems last longer. I saw somebody did ask in the comments here, where am I moving to? I'm moving east of Nashville to the Hartsville area, actually so just above Hartsville. And so that's where I'm going to be located in the future.
Very cool. Well, dude, I appreciate you being with us today. Thanks a lot for joining us. I'll make sure there's a link to your website in the show notes as well. And good on you for doing this. And thanks for reaching out and asking to be on the show. I think it's really important that we demonstrate to others the things that can be done, because there's so many people that I think over the years I've met that said, but you had someone on and said they could do it. I thought if they could do it, I could do it. And it's not just this. It's like, I mean, John Dowey of Dowey Farms, like we had a guy on that talked about selling microgreens for business. He now runs a business selling microgreens. So he's like, if that guy can do it, I can do it. And he was just tired of having to work for other people. And like that became his thing. I really appreciate you kind of demonstrating that this is something that anybody can do if they work hard enough. And as I always say, those of you that say, but, stop saying, but, or stop saying, I wish I could. Just simply ask yourself, how can I? If you and that's everything. That's homeschooling. That's starting a business. That's affording a house. That's getting a farm. Whatever it is for you, whatever you want, start asking yourself, how can I? And every time you feel the negative component coming in about I'll never do it or whatever, just kill that and ask yourself, how can I? And you will get answers. You may not like the answers, but at least you'll get the answers. And again, thanks for being with us today, Aaron.
Man, it's been a great pleasure. I've been listening to you for a long time. When I found you, you were probably on episode 300 or 400, and I went back and I started at episode 1, and I listened to all the first episodes while you kept with the new ones. I was listening to all of them until I kind of caught up, and there was a couple years where I fell off. And you had Corey on. You were on Corey's show for fish, and I'm like, man, it kind of sparked me. I'm like, I'm gonna start listening to Jack again. And it's been great. It's encouraged me to start where I'm at. So I've made a lot of mistakes on my suburban lot, but I planted a lot of trees and fruit and garden, and I sheet mulched the front yard, a big chunk of that for a while. And man, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've learned a lot of lessons. So when I do move out to our 33 acres, like I don't have to make those same mistakes at scale. Now I've learned some things, and I'm super grateful for that and everything you've taught me along the way.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us today.